Hey, what's up? It's Phoenix. I've been thinking, wondering if other people have very powerful feelings of depression or despair, loneliness, alienation. And I imagine that other people do, that people probably struggle with it a lot. Maybe because they don't know how to resolve it. And I would say that in my own life, I would describe it as I am no stranger to devastation. With the mix of the world and the way that things are, where we can easily escalate to violence and yet also have complete asceticism and passivity. And then the range that exists there, it might be that some people never experience devastation. It might be that other people experience the most extreme things that can happen to people. And I kind of struggle with it because there's definitely some things that I get to enjoy living in America. But I would say that the devastation is still very much real. I can't really describe the devastation except to say that it's these unimaginable feelings of despair. And of course you can try to, I don't mean to exaggerate, of course, and you can try to change your perception, develop the coping skills, find ways of living with trauma. And these are all things that I highly recommend when people are able to do that. But what I would say is that I actually kind of wanted to talk about devastation because of the fact that devastation, to feel devastated, to feel like you have no hope, and to feel like there's nothing that you can do to change your circumstances can be a very defeating place to be. And I don't know what to do in that sense because I experienced the devastation anyway, and I still have to be able to live with it whether I want to or not. And so I can try to detach from that devastation. I could try to look at it objectively and see what could be done. But it is always that chaos. I mean, that's the whole reason why I would gravitate towards heavier music, even though much of the culture of heavier music has let me down. But to me, it's this whole idea that there are these emotions to express, to try to understand. And it might be that you can't really understand what those feelings are or how to deal with them, but you have to deal with them anyway. And there are those times where I worry that I'm not actually going to be able to deal with them at all, partly because the emotions are too much. And you could call it anything, depression, the emotions that come from trauma, the chaos that you might feel within. And you might not really know what to do with those feelings despite your best effort. And so, yes, it may be that maybe the most extreme things aren't happening to where your life is literally devastated. But when I think of the cruelty of the world, I can't help but imagine that it isn't just me that would feel something like this, would feel that devastation. And of course, like I said, trying to detach from it and look at it in a more positive, well, maybe not positive, maybe a more neutral light to try to see it for what it is. But it seems that people's lives can be leveled in the most arbitrary ways. And the whole idea is that people can go through unimaginable traumas and still have to live in the world, and that the world isn't going to be fair just because it hasn't been fair to you. And so when you look at these when you're able to look at the principles and kind of imagine it in a different way and able to look at it differently, I think it can be helpful for detaching from it. But of course, it's one thing to live with those devastating feelings and with the devastation, and it's another thing to be consumed by it to the point to where you don't really have any choice but to try to get through it and to try to survive, because you don't really have any other options if you're going to live. And I think it's an interesting thing that that's how it turns out. And it can be horrible to try to live with and to figure out. And I guess what I'd want to say that I think is most important about what I hope to articulate is that the devastation is real, that people can feel a certain way and not really know how to describe their emotions. They might not know how to describe the trauma. And that makes it to where you may not have any choices. You may not have the choices that maybe it seems like other people might have. And it's really hard because it's easy for it to make it seem like this is the only way that it is, that it's all in your mind. But it isn't, and we know that it's not. And yet it's easy to think that it is. So I guess that for me is the takeaway with all of it. which is that it's not going to go the way that I want. It's not going to be what I would hope. And it could be partly because of the way human nature operates and the way that we can justify war and violence in any moment. And we can create victims, and we can do this regardless of how fair or just any of those systems are. And I'm at a place to where I'm not really sure that any kind of system that is erected is necessarily fair or just. And I think that's what's difficult is I don't really think justice exists. I don't think justice exists when people are struggling so much to be able to get by. And it might be different for me if I was more grounded in my emotions, knowing, of course, that emotions aren't the only aspect of life. But I realize that for me, it's really hard for me to be grounded because that sensitivity shows me the ugliness that is there and the things that make me wrecked and the things that I can't quite figure out what to do with. And that's what I hate about such feelings, is feeling like I don't control anything but my response when my response is actually falling apart. And that can be a really difficult thing because you would think, well, you have these solutions to your problems and, don't take it so seriously and, lighten up and do therapy. But I realize that to an extent, such things run dry because some people are wired differently. And I've had to realize that I'm wired differently due to traumas and due to what the traumas have done. And also just due to the fact that my brain works differently. And so it will be that, I can try all of the things, but those feelings of being wrecked and destroyed are still going to be there, and that I don't control that. And so even if I may have tried to invert it by choosing to express beautiful things, by choosing to express a positivity or a hope that I try to express, that is there, but it often doesn't feel like it does anything or even matters because it doesn't take away from the destruction that we face in our lives. And of course, I recognize that I'm using some intense language to describe these things, and I know that a lot of people might not be able to resonate with that at all and actually think that things are very good. And that's understandable, of course, because like I said, there's a mix. There's a way in which there are really, really good things in this life and really good things that you can enjoy, but there's also a lot of danger. And it seems to me that I can't help but just think that whenever you feel devastated or destroyed, that one of the best things that you can do is just realize that you can be courageous, that you can choose to respond in those conditions anyway. And that's where the empowerment is. I don't believe in any system. I don't believe in any kind of justice. I don't believe in anything good in the worst iterations. But I nonetheless think that you can act courageously. And I don't think that the point is always to respond as if life is fair or just. I think it's just learning how to respond at all in a way that takes strength and in a way that is hopeful even, and in a way that is courageous and honest and has integrity. And of course, I don't get to decide how my life unfolds in a lot of ways when I don't control the people around me, but I do know that I still have my inner constitution. And while I wouldn't say that I'm completely stoic in that way due to the sensitivity that I have and that I can post things, I realize that there's more to it and that it's living within the shambles, living within the pieces that you're trying to reconstruct, and how sometimes you don't have any other choice. I'm Phoenix. I hope that you like this talk. I hope you'll check out my books. I hope you'll check out my other videos. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon.